Good day everyone, I am Michael, the moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone for today's webinar, which is a legal overview for educators and parents, laws that apply to students with disabilities. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our presenter for today, Hope and Kers. Hope and Kers, M-A-E-D-E-S-Q, is a licensed special education teacher and 25 plus years litigation attorney. She has bachelor's degree in special education from Boston University, cum laude, a master's degree in special education from New York University, 30 plus postgraduate credits in educational supervision and administration, and her law degree from Brooklyn Law School. She is a frequent speaker nationally and locally on education laws. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, Hope.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to be discussing the key laws that affect students with disabilities, sometimes called SWD, and that is the IDEA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so those are the three federal laws that address the obligations of public schools and charter schools. And this is kind of what it looks like. So I mentioned this before, a word or three about charter schools. They are public. So let's start with the IDEA. And that is the nation's special education law, SPED law, further education, employment, and independent living. Okay, the legal protections under the IDEA these are really the principles. So what exactly is FAPE? So the procedural safeguards notice, that's what I told you about. That is very hard to read, but this contains all of the rights that parents have, but this is all of the rights that parents do have. So how does a child qualify for an IEP? It's a two-step process. So this is the eligibility process. Okay, what if your child is gifted? And that's a question that we've gotten. The mere fact that a student is gifted does not disqualify them from eligibility for special education and related services under the IDEA. What is an IEP? It is a legal document under the IDEA. Who is the IEP meeting? The parents or the legal guardians. A general education teacher. So parent participation is a hallmark of the IDEA. And it means that the parents must have an opportunity to meaningfully participate. Input is, and how important meaningful participation in the IEP meetings is. It said it's a fundamental requirement under the IDEA, and this was a case where the school tried to get in touch with the parent, and the parent kept putting it off. The school can eventually have the IEP meeting without the parent, but they must document all the efforts. They must document every phone call. So, will the IEP get your child the best education? Nope. So just a word about placement and location. I always throw this in because it's really important. Okay, now just talking about Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And this is what Section 504 says. So the ADA, then it's modeled after the 504, and there are different titles. Title 1 is employment, and then, but we're focusing on Title 2, which is schools. That includes schools, public entities. And Title 3, that applies to private schools. So Title 2 is the non-discrimination, and it is regardless of whether they receive federal financial assistance. Title 3 we talked about before, and then Title 3 and private schools. So there are state-specific. What is the implementation, oversight, and enforcement? Section 504 is enforced by the Office of Civil Rights. And those are the different circuits, the different regions, rather, for OCR. So these are the differences between the IDEA and a 504 plan. And this is what specially designed instruction is. These are the related services, and it's anything that a child will need to benefit from special education. These are examples of accommodation, which means accessibility. Big difference between an IEP and 504 is in the discipline. So this is how FAPE is defined under IEP. We talked about that, how a child qualifies for a 504. And these are the policy guidance. So OSEP, the Office of Special Education. So rights if your child is in private school or homeschooled. Then there's also a law for students who are homeless. FERPA is another law. That is the disclosure law with schools I mentioned days before. There's a difference between calendar days, school days, and business days, so you always have to look at the rule. For disputes, these are different ways to resolve them. State complaints are procedural. Due process is actual litigation. So there are exceptions to the 2-year timeline and due process. These are issues that can be brought up in a due process. These are just all kinds of examples of violations. There's a difference between substantive and procedural violations. And this is all kinds of relief that's available. The IEP, the judge will order implementation of the IEP, conduct an evaluation, and these attorney's fees. Okay, well, thank you very much. It's really important to have good communication with the school. Okay, so have a great school year. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Hope. So that does conclude the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. All disconnect now. Have a great day ahead.
Yeah.